You got him?
Yeah, I got him. You won! Will you stop it?
Take him. 2.
You moved to Hollywood in 1978, and it was after something like 10 years of bit roles that you finally landed the position in The Untouchables.
Yes. Yeah, it took me a while just to get an agent, you know. And without an agent in Los Angeles, you really have very little opportunities. And in those days, the opportunities weren't that many. There was no cable television. There was just 3 networks and about 5 studios. So without an agent, I couldn't get the opportunities to audition. But, you know, slowly I kind of just kept making my way, and I finally got an agent that was very helpful, and she was able to get me out on some auditions, and I landed a couple films prior to The Untouchables, and one in particular that they saw, and they asked me to, it was the last movie that Hal Ashby did called 8 Million Ways to Die, and they saw me in that film, and they called me in to play the killer in the film, Frank Nitti, which was Capone's killer, because the character I played in that other movie was not a good, you know, he was a bad guy.
But it was that role in The Untouchables that really put you out there. People finally knew who Garcia was.
Yeah, well, the thing was that it was a very successful film. You know, whenever you're in a movie that was successful around the world, then all of a sudden you somehow, you know, there's some, you know, your marketing value goes up, therefore your opportunities as an actor go up.
You worked with director Ridley Scott in Black Rain with Michael Douglas?
With Mike Douglas, yeah.
Yeah. What was that like?
Oh, lovely. I mean, Ridley is one, you know, from very early on, I was interested not only in being an actor, but being a filmmaker, you know. So I had these opportunities that I got with great filmmakers, starting from Hal Ashby and then De Palma, and then Ridley Scott, and so on and so forth. And so it was a great opportunity to watch Ridley work, you know, and what his particular design for this movie was, and I learned a lot from him. You know, I was always kind of looking over his shoulder, and then I was, you know, I had the blessing of working with Michael Douglas, who, if you ever want to be in the trenches with somebody, you know, there's a couple guys that I would turn to, and immediately would be Michael Douglas and Jeff Bridges, you know.
Vincenzo. Grazie, Carlo. Don Corleone. Don Vincenzo Corleone.
Francis Ford Coppola. Mm-hmm. He saw you and he thought he wanted you in
I'm not so sure about that.
No?
No, that's not the way it worked at all, actually. I was doing a movie for Paramount called Internal Affairs, and produced by Frank Mancuso Jr. And Frank Sr., who's at the head of the studio, came to me at lunch one day, and he said, "What are you doing in September?" This was like in May. He said, "What are you doing in September? Because I want to talk to Francis. I want you to be, you know, play this character of Vincent Corleone." And it was already rumored what it was, and they were looking for a young man. The script wasn't really released, but everybody knew they were looking for the young guy to be the young Corleone. So I said to him, I said, "Well, I'll check my schedule. I'll get back to you." The thing was that if you know about the Godfather history, in Godfather 1, the studio suggested all these people to play the brothers, including Michael Corleone, which was the lead. And even Brando they didn't want Brando in the movie. Even Brando auditioned for the film in disguise, because the studio did not want Brando in the film. So, you know, the people that the studio would suggest to Francis, from Francis' point of view, which was a ludicrous suggestion, you know. So the fact that I was being suggested by the studio already, I thought, you know, for me it was, I was honored, but for Francis it was like, okay, who do they have now? I met Francis once, so we just had a meeting, and then I was the last person to screen test on a Friday, and they gave me the part on Saturday, and we started rehearsal on Monday, so.
That must have been a dream come true for someone who was inspired by
It was an extraordinary thing, you know, that's, obviously you have to give it up to, you know, the people who gave you the fortitude to pursue that dream, you know, and that all of a sudden you find yourself in sort of facing your own sort of imaginary destiny that you thought you might, you know, like your dream all of a sudden became a reality.
And I guess the Oscar nomination must have just topped it off.
Well, you know, that's the greatest honor that an actor can have, is when your peers, you know, signal out